So Muraya, karibu sana on this game drive.
Okay.
Thank you so much for agreeing to do this.
So, Brian, thanks so much also for giving me the ride.
Yeah. So Muraya, you are the boss of Nairobi National Park, one of my favorite parks in Kenya.
Okay. So karibu.
Asante sana.
It's good to see you. You're a regular visitor.
Yes.
The park. Sasa naona I might be handing over to you to take over the seat of the senior warden.
Yeah, at this point, nimejua Nairobi Park vizuri sana.
The beauty with the park is that there is no time that you can say you've seen enough.
That's true.
Because the park is always throwing in something new, something refreshing.
Yeah.
When you see the animals are not in a cage where you are sure that, you know, the next cage, this is what I find. It's not like an exhibition where you are certain that this is what I'm finding. So you might have come in probably last week. The animals that you saw last week might have, you know, moved. You are seeing a different species, or you might even be seeing the same individual but under different circumstances.
Yeah.
So that is what, you know, makes a game drive beautiful. And again, soaking in the nice weather.
Yeah, that's true.
By itself is very relaxing.
Yeah, and it's a very different feel. You forget you're in Nairobi.
Kabisa.
You completely forget the urban life, and then you get into nature, and then it reminds you of what nature feels like. And it's just here, Nairobi ni hapa tu.
Ni hapa tu. Actually, what we always realize with most of the visitors we have, especially now if we are doing the guiding, we go in for about 10 minutes and they've even lost the bearing of where they are.
Yeah.
Because within 5 minutes, you can't see the skyscrapers anymore. So unashindwa, where exactly am I in Nairobi? Is this actually in Nairobi?
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, the park is actually in Nairobi County.
Yeah.
We occupy a sixth of the landmass of Nairobi County, which is quite huge.
Yeah, that's huge. Yeah.
Land measuring 117 square kilometers in Nairobi is not small land.
Yeah.
But when you look at its value in terms of conservation, is much bigger. If you look at it in terms of from a commercial perspective, you might not get the gist of it.
Yeah.
But when you look at it from a conservation perspective, from a tourism perspective, ya kwamba mtu wa Nairobi yako na mahali, get away for the weekend, get away from his busy schedule, then you can realize why it's actually a gemstone in Nairobi.
Yeah, and it is also the first park to be gazetted.
Exactly, yeah. It was the first park to be gazetted, December 16th, 1946. So actually this December we are celebrating how many? 77 years.
Yes,
77 years. So it's not a young park.
Yeah, that's an old man.
Kwa parks, it's a senior citizen.
Yeah, it's a senior citizen.
It's a senior citizen, which is good for us because you can imagine for all those years that it has been in gazettement, we have been able to maintain its ecological integrity. Of course, with a lot of challenges. The situation back then, 1946, even the land outside was not much developed. So the park was just, you know, a part of a connected ecosystem. But now it's very isolated because now everybody all around is putting up, you know, facilities, roads are coming up, railways are coming up, houses are coming up. So we are now actually seeing, you know, the impact of that subdivision outside. Because many years back, it used to appear to be one continuous park.
Yeah.
You could move from the park to the Arthi Kapiti plains without even realizing you've left the park. But nowadays, you can easily realize, from here, I'm now actually living in the park.
Yeah. And with that, urban development,
yes,
and now the park trying to protect it, it brings a lot of problems with human-wildlife conflict, right? Which is one of the biggest challenges you have.
Yeah, actually one of the biggest challenges, human-wildlife conflict. And you see, population is growing. That's human population.
Yeah.
It's expanding. We are seeing more people moving into those areas because, of course, now land within the city itself, you know, land does not expand.
Yep.
And people need a place where they can put up their homes. So with that, wildlife are still, you know, following their natural migration instincts. So wanatoka huko nje, they are finding fences, they are finding roads, they are finding people doing or taking up economic activities that are not compatible with wildlife. So eventually what happens? Human-wildlife conflict. And you see, conflict is not just about the loss of property or loss of livestock to that animal. Conflict can even come in terms of you have a buffalo out there that is actually disturbing people, you know, kids, or impeding their movement to school. That's conflict by itself. It might not have a physical manifestation. Hautakuta kuna mtu ako na injury, but hiyo tu kuzuia watoto kwenda shule is already actually an incidence of human wildlife conflict.
Yes. Yeah, and with this job, because you're as much as you're working for wildlife, you also have to remember you're working for the community.
Exactly.
And that's some of those challenges that you face with this job. And so I wanted to ask you, this is a good segue, why did you decide to work for wildlife?
Mine is very interesting because I can't really say that before I joined KWS, which of course is about 17 years ago, I can't say that I had that much passion. Mine is the reverse. I joined and the passion grew on me. Yeah. Because my background, actually, Brian, interestingly, is not in wildlife. It's not in wildlife at all. The course that I did in college is thousands and thousands of miles away from wildlife. Yeah. But KWS advertised for management trainees, graduate trainees. I applied, was recruited, joined the service. I can tell you initially, I was telling myself, hapa ndafanya miaka kidogo, then I go back to my line, what I studied. But you see, when I joined, because the first park I actually came to was Nairobi Park as a tourism officer, then it grows on you. Yeah. You begin appreciating this job, you begin appreciating the interactions, then because you're also learning something new, so you are telling yourself every day, can I be able to learn something new? And the more you learn, the more now the passion grows on you. So mine, the passion came in actually after I got the job. Yep. I began working in this park. That's when now I learned, Kenya has so much to offer. Yeah. You can imagine, I had not been to this park, and yet I had been around Nairobi before, but not in this park. Yeah. So even for me, it was actually a first-time experience. So you can imagine I'm landing here as a tourism officer, and the tourism officer has actually never been in the park. He's coming to be the tourism officer. So even my first drives were actually just about learning and appreciating what is here. Because nilikuwa najiuliza, Nairobi National Park, what could it be offering? When I saw the appointment letter. But now when I got here, now it begins growing on you. And you can see, sijaenda mahali. Now so many years down the line. 17 years. Sasa niko nyumbani sasa. Yeah, and now you joined. Yes. You are a tourism officer, and then you grew in your ranks. Yes. Until you became the senior warden of Nairobi Park. Yes. What makes Nairobi Park? Because it's the smallest. Is it the smallest? We have other parks which are smaller. What makes it unique is that it's the only park in the world. We are not talking just about Kenya. In the world, located in a capital city. Yeah. So that is actually what makes it stand out. And of course, it stands out as being the first park to be gazetted in the country. So it being the only park in the city. Yes. And also it being one of the first park in Kenya to be gazetted. Yes. And do you have like funny or cool wildlife encounters of Nairobi Park? More often than not, those encounters are usually between our visitors and the wildlife. Yeah. Being located in the city, Mkenya anaamka asubuhi anasema kesho nataka kwenda game drive. And most of them utakuta it is the first time they are coming to the park. So the idea that they might be having about the wildlife in the park is that, see, in Nairobi, those animals must be tame. There is no way you can be having a wild lion within Nairobi City. Yeah. So unakuta they come in, as they're doing a game drive, they feel that they can do that close interaction. Yeah. Fortunately, we've never had an incident where somebody has been harmed or killed by an animal within the park. Yeah. One reason being we have very active patrols in the park. Yep. But you see, you always find that funny encounter where mtu amestuliwa na giraffe. They get too close with the vehicle, too close to an animal. The animal gets scared. And sometimes also, because some might not understand animal behavior. So they're just driving by, then a giraffe takes off. Wanasema, we karibu itugonge. And yet, the giraffe was just, reacting normally to the situation. But hiyo karibu itugonge. But we always advise people, when you're coming, just remember this is a wildlife area. It is wild. Give the animal space, stay in your vehicle, then all will be okay. Yeah. And there's one cool fact you're the one who told me. I don't know if you remember you telling me. Yes. That when it rains and the grass is tall, Yes.
Especially hoofed animals don't like the grass.
What normally happens,
Yeah.
like now it's raining heavily.
Yeah.
So you can see even the wildlife numbers have gone down a bit. They all tend to migrate outside to a place where the grass is not that big, because one, inside the park it gets quite soggy. Okay. This is black cotton soil, relatively flat, so it gets quite soggy. The hoofed animals have a problem with walking in those soggy areas. And again, the grass now gets big and tough. So they prefer to move out to where the grass is not that big. Interestingly, during the dry season, they'll now all be coming back because they'll have exhausted the grass out there, and the grass in the park will still be intact. Water supply in the park will still be intact. So we're expecting now when it gets dry, interestingly, most of the animals will be back in. And you see again, that now brings in the aspect of human-wildlife conflict. If the herbivores move out, the cannibals follow suit. So unakuta sasa pia simba wote wamehama, wako nje
wanaenda kutafuta chakula.
Wameenda kufuata chakula yao huko nje.
That's very interesting. And now with you being the senior warden, what's your daily routine like when you get in the office in the morning?
The routine begins even before we get to the office.
Yeah.
Because early in the morning, we do something we call the morning call-up. So we get a brief for myself. I get my brief from the various department heads on how the situation has been overnight. Because you see, you are managing both wildlife and the people, and the staff has a good staff population. Most of them, they also live with their families within the camps. So early in the morning, probably at around 5 a.m., I get a brief from the section the department heads on how the situation has been overnight, so that I know what am I going to prioritize in the morning. Iko askari mgonjwa kwa paka nafaa kwenda hospitali, yes, that needs to be addressed. Is there an animal that was spotted overnight that has an issue that you need to alert the vet? Yes, there is. So I'll be able to know these are the priority areas. Is there a road that it rained overnight, the road is impassable? Yes, there is. So I know I need to contact the engineer so that first thing in the morning, hiyo mabarabara yote tumeshughulikia. Then now for me, I do a summary of that and I pass it now to higher office. But if the situation is very critical, then it is addressed immediately. There's those situations which can't wait till morning hours. So if the situation is, urgent, then we just address it at that particular time. Then now from there, of course, when I'll be coming into the office, because ours is not an 8 to 5 job. It depends on what you're expecting. For example, when we're hosting VIPs, and this park receives VIPs very regularly. If the VIP is coming in at 6, it means that by 5:30, we are already at the gate, so that we have formed up, the convoy is ready, everything is ready. So you can't really say that mimi nitaingia ofisi 8, nitoke 5. Sometimes 80% of the work that we tend to do that day will actually be done from 5:30 a.m. to around 10 a.m. Because you are doing VIPs, you are planning for the day's program, then from there things might ease off a bit, so that now you can be able to do administrative work. Ile sasa tunaita routine ile ya paperwork.
And there's something you've mentioned. This is not like, and I agree with you, this is not a normal 8 to 5 job. As you can see, there are rhinos there.
It's only rhino. White rhino, yes.
White rhinos.
You can even see some 2 of us there.
Yeah.
We have a very good population of rhinos in the park. It's one of the key attractions here, both the black and the white rhino. And for most visitors, they must see in this park, ile wanakuwa wameka kwa checklist, rhino na simba. Of course, unfortunately, we also tell people, sometimes we get too obsessed with showing visitors the rhinos and the lions, that we just drive past very magnificent animals. Umepita zebra, mgeni ametoka nchi ya ng'ambo, they've never seen a zebra, probably just in a zoo. They've never seen a giraffe in a natural environment. Lakini wewe umemchukua, umempeleka mbio, ati wacha nimpeleke aone simba, wacha nimpeleke nasikia kuna mahali iko rhino. So you're just zooming past other wildlife species. So we always advise even visitors, especially tour guides, let the visitor enjoy the country. Hakuna haraka, si amekwambia kuna 3 hours kwa park. Usimkimbize mbio. They fail to appreciate what we have here.
And what the relationship you have with not just the visitor,
Yes.
but also the tour companies.
Uh-huh.
It's very important because, as you said, ulikuja, you learned about wildlife, so you'd
Yes.
expect the same thing for from a tour agent, so they
Yes.
can be able to pass the information that what you do
Yes.
and what happens in the park to the guests.
Yes.
Is it something that you seriously work on with educating the travel agents, stakeholders, and people like that?
Yeah, now because for the tour industry, we have both the formal and informal engagements.
Yeah.
Formal engagements are planned from KWS headquarters. We have the marketing department team, so they'll organize stakeholder forums. Like, I think for this year we've had quite a number, more so because after the introduction of the e-citizen payment system, we needed to do even more engagements. Then we also have engagements where we are coming up with the facilities that people can invest in. The good thing with them is that the industry catches up very fast, because this is a very delicate industry. If you're a tour operator and you don't adapt fast, hakuna biashara utapata. So even for them, they're always able to soak up information very, very fast. Then informally at the park level, we also engage them. At the gate, ile tu kuongea nao, tunaambia kuna mabadiliko kidogo. Like now when it rains heavily, there are some roads which are closed. We're able to disseminate that information very fast at the gate. Then, Brian, another thing is that now with social media, information goes out very fast.
Yeah.
Kitambo, when we are managing a park, if there is an issue that was coming from external parties, ulikuwa unangojea kwa email. Ama probably uone kwa FB. But say na WhatsApp, I can tell you things move very fast.
Yeah.
Right now unakuta Warden is a member of about 20 groups on WhatsApp, all of them having something to do with the park. So unakuta asubuhi, apart now from the formal call-ups that we do, bado unaangalia pia WhatsApp. Because unakuta kuna mgeni ameingia kwa park ama aliingia jana, aliona kitu, amekutumia. And you have to react to it. Yeah. So it has actually contributed positively to the ability of the warden to manage a park.
Yeah.
Because kama saizi unaona tumeingia game drive around 7 a.m.
Yeah.
The park opened at 6. Yeah. So already if I want to know where the animals are, we have a sightings group. Yeah. So I can quickly join the sightings group. Then if I have an issue with what or the behavior of some visitors, some tour drivers in the park, I go to the same group. Na napost nauliza hii ni gari ya nani iko off-road. So unaona, it also ensures that there is some discipline with park users in the park.
With park, yeah. And as you say, some of the park regulations are speed, obviously.
Yes.
Off-road.
Littering, single-use plastics. Yes.
Yeah, and there's a fine, if you're caught.
So what happens? Because for us as an institution, we are not able to enforce those fines.
Okay.
But we have the police. Kama sasa an issue of overspeeding, because overspeeding mtu ata-argue siku ana overspeed. But if you end up having an accident in the park or causing an accident, we call in the police.
Yeah.
So police watakuja kuulize swali. If the speed limit is 40, how come you rolled? And unfortunately, we've seen those incidences happening in the park. Ironically, we try to improve our roads so that hata mtu mwenye kona gari ndogo, they can be able to enjoy a game drive. But some of them now turn the nice roads into racing circuits. Mkenya number 2. Mahali anataka kujificha afanye inaitwa nini? Ajifundishe driving.
Yeah.
Anajiambia ni park. Kuja analipa park fees asubuhi mapema.
Anakuja kujifunza driving.
Sasa unajua hapa speed limit anajua even for other users it's 40.
It's 40.
So hana wasiwasi.
That's how unajua uba hiyo ni an animal can inaweza tokea anytime. It's very unpredictable.
Because there are guys you'll meet in the park driving, of course they are doing the 40, but you can see E40 iko na element ya bado anajifunza. Ameona the only place I can hide and try some of these things
is Nairobi Park.
Is Nairobi Park. But we always tell people, just be careful. We might not be there on all roads at all places.
Yeah.
But we don't want you to end up causing an incident, causing an accident that could be avoidable.
Yeah.
Fuata tu zile sheria zinafaa so that all of us can be able to enjoy the game drive very peacefully.
Yeah. Okay. And there's something, let's go back to your daily routine.
Yes.
You said that this job is not like an 8 to 5. Anytime, anywhere. And I agree with you, because I'm also in kind of that situation whereby you're called at 10 p.m., 11 p.m., sometimes 6 in the morning to come to the office. And so then it means then this is a job that you have to love, whether you like it or not. Because
hii job
it's not,
haikupei choice.
Hakuna Christmas, hakuna.
You'll have to fall in love with it. Because bila hiyo, I can tell you might lead a very stressful life. You can imagine for Christmas and most of these festive periods, rarely are we home. Our silverback jackals. They normally walk in pairs. Male and a female. Always on the move. Always on the move. Ndamo ukimpatia nafasi, hata atakupatia nafasi umuone vizuri. But if you drive too fast, you drive too close, he'll just take off.
But you hata react from.
Then you also remember, apart from yourself, there are visitors. Pia hawapatia nafasi, because if you come, you shout, you scream, you scare them off. What happens now even to the other visitors?
What do you think about people who have because I learned something. I learned this year that you can actually have a pet like a parrot, but then you have to have it licensed.
Yes.
So how do you select which animal to license as a pet, or which animal is approved for having it as a pet at home?
So now, depending also on the intention that you have with the animal that you are looking at. So most of these animals, you can have them within your private facility. You can even get a permit for crocodiles. You can get permits for ostriches. But now, if you are applying for permits to keep crocodiles, you can't apply that you are keeping it as a pet. Unaona hapo kutakuwa na issue. So that one, you have to explain clearly why you want to have crocodiles on your private facility and the kind of facilities that you have, because we know the dangers that will be posed probably by an animal like a crocodile. So we must also ensure that isikue wewe from at the back of your mind you are seeing it as a pet. So by the time we are approving, our licensing team will have visited the ground to confirm that the license you are applying for and the kind of structures that you have can actually accommodate that animal. So birds is normally not a big issue, because they will not require that huge space. So it's much easier to get permits, for birds. So people will keep the parrots, they'll have the guinea fowl. Some will even have imported birds, the exotic birds. And we get a lot of people, especially now in residential areas, coming for permits of the same. So those ones, they're usually not a very big issue. The biggest concern now will be animals that we know can pose a danger also to yourself. So that one, your facilities must be intact, must be inspected, and it is done annually, so that we don't have an issue now of where the so-called pet actually turn, against the keeper.
So every year, if you have an animal privately, that is considered a wild animal, you have to renew your license.
You have to renew your permit. Then our teams, both the licensing team, the vet team, the warden on the ground, they can do an impromptu check on your facility. Because even your neighbors might raise a concern. Huyu mtu alipewa permit ya kuweka crocodile, but we feel that there is an issue. So our team can actually do an impromptu visit, just for the welfare of the animal and even for your own safety.
For your own safety and the people that are around you. Unaweza weka crocodile alafu kumbe inatokanga inaenda.
Imetoka ama umeshindwa kuilisha. Some of these animals, like lions, they'll probably do about 8 kgs of meat a day. So initially you might feel that it's a very easy thing to do. Useme you have a ranch, unataka kujijengea mahali, but after a few months you had opened it probably as a tourism facility, it's not generating money. Simba ndio hawa na wanahitaji kulishwa. The facility is not generating money. So the welfare of the animal is now compromised.
And as you think about the welfare of the animal, something I also learned just a few years ago, is that KWS has a very big expense in feeding, especially like the animals at the orphanage, and safari walk.
Yes.
So when people pay conservation fees, they also need to realize that those animals have to be fed. As you said, one lion is fed 8 kgs a day.
Yes, an average of 8 kgs
a day, and that is food that you have to buy. If you have a sick animal, there is medication, there is all these things. These are some of the behind the scenes that people don't really know about, but they play a vital role in wildlife health. Do you have some expenses, like for example in Nairobi National Park, that people don't really think about, or the behind the scenes that people don't really think about?
Some of the expenses, one, which are not very noticeable now, apart from the operational ones. We need to keep our fleet mobile, our staff, well geared and so on. Like the veterinary aspect, it's something that is done very regularly and people rarely notice. You get a sick animal, the vets have to come in. There's a lot of equipment used. We have the medication being used and so on. But after the treatment is done, rarely will people even notice that such an expense occurred. When you do a road, everybody can see. Barabara ndiyo hii. When you build a house, everyone can see the house is here. But when you treat an animal, and more often than not, we don't treat it in the eyes of the public.
Yeah.
So it's an expense that people will actually rarely notice that it occurred.
Yes. Another big expense I know is human-wildlife conflict, bringing the animal back.
Translocation.
Translocation, yes.
We call it capture and translocation.
Yeah.
Because translocating even, one animal, it's a costly exercise. One, you will have probably done monitoring for about 2 or 3 weeks. So you have teams there, spending the nights there, monitoring the animal. Then more often than not, if it's like let's say it's a lioness, you also have to ensure that, if the cubs are around, you translocate all of them at the same time. So more often than not, we're actually translocating a whole family. Then there is the issue of where are you going to release them? Because it doesn't mean that because the animal is from here, it must be released here. It is probably a big risk to the community around that place. So if it's far in the community land, you can't take it from this community land and then drop it within the same community land. You are probably now forced to take it to a national park. And it's not all parks that can be able to accommodate that animal. So unakuta kuna mnyama atatolewa let's say Meru, you have to bring it to Laikipia. Ametolewa hapa, amepelekwa mahali ingine for various reasons, and there is always a cost to it.
And yes, there's a very big cost to it and care, because also mnyama kama amezoea kukula for example grassland ya huko, tena umlete huku na maybe haja-adapt, that's another big risk.
So hiyo ndio tunaita ile post release monitoring. Akiwa amehamishwa, you have to monitor especially the first few weeks to see how the animal is also adapting to the new environment. Because as you said, hii nyasi ni tofauti, maji hapa ni tofauti, the climate also here might be a bit different. Then it's also trying to establish territory, and in that trying to establish territory, unakuta anazunguka. So you're also checking to see whether it has settled down, because you might translocate an animal, then you realize the animal is not settling down. Anazunguka tu. So it takes a bit of time before the animal settles. But now once you see it has settled, it has established territory, you also retreat. Pia yeye usampatie nafasi to just cope with the environment. The good thing with animals is that if the environment is suitable, they adapt very fast. Akienda kuta there is enough food, there is water, there is no that serious competition with other animals. It settles down very fast.
Now let's move away from wildlife kidogo. Let's talk about Nairobi. There's a story you were giving me a while back, I don't know if you remember.
Yes.
About the original Nairobi, how Nairobi became Nairobi.
Yes.
When it was a trade center, and then it became a hub for business. And then now it became Nairobi.
Yes.
Unaweza nikukumbusha hiyo story?
Now, nilikwambia my background was not in wildlife. So huko nyuma kuna vitu nilikuwa nimesoma za history na nini. So when you look at, and it's also very closely connected to how even Nairobi National Park came into being. By the time the railway was being done, kisoma hizo vitabu wanakuambia this area was teeming with wildlife.
Yeah.
So mtu wa Nairobi asikuambia ati wanyama wanatusumbua. Kisoma, when they were describing Nairobi back then, the area was teeming with wildlife. Where we have the CBD, ukiangalia huko 1900s, people were actually talking of, a rhino within the area that today we are calling the CBD. People are talking of abundance of giraffe, of buffalo within the area that today we call CBD. So sisi ndio tumekuja tukakuta wanyama tukawa displace. Sasa tunasema mnyama ameingia town. Mnyama hajaingia town.
Wewe ndio umeingia
kwa. Wewe ndio umeingia mahali alikuwa ukakata miti. And you see, Nairobi back then was a swamp.
Yep.
Hakuna mtu alikuwa anaishi kwa swamp. Who? When there is so much better land. Yeah. It was actually a marshland. It was a wetland.
Yeah.
A lot of drainage had to be done to have Nairobi the way it is today. Because even when you look at the level at which Nairobi is, it's much lower than the surrounding areas.
Yeah.
So there is no, you can convince me that people actually used to live in that swamp. Sisi tumekuja, tumehamisha watu, tumehamisha wanyama, we push them westwards, now towards the area that today we are referring to as Nairobi National Park.
Yeah.
So, the city grew, and fortunately, those years back, you can imagine in the 1940s, there were people who had the vision that these animals that are being displaced will need to create a permanent home for them. You can imagine, Brian, if those men and women at that time had not had the foresight to gazette this portion of land.
Yeah.
Assuming, because that's the time they were mapping Nairobi. So just imagine if they mapped this area to be a residential area. And mimi nawe hatungekuwa hapa leo.
That's true.
You can imagine the kind of wildlife that we're enjoying today. Sasa sijui angewasukuma mpaka wapi. But they had the foresight, because for them they knew how cities grow. Don't forget, unajua ni wazungu walikuwa wametoka makwao. So they knew how cities grow. Probably ungeambia mtu mwingine angesema hapana, before Nairobi gets to those it will take years. But for them they knew if we don't safeguard this area now, it will be lost forever.
Yeah. Like what happened with Karura as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Some of these areas, if you don't gazette them well in advance, hizi vitu singoje until there are issues, ndio unakimbia. You need to be focused probably 40-50 years from now.
Yeah.
Sasa hiyo ndio ile swali sisi na wewe tunafaa kujiuliza. What are we doing today that in the next 30 years people can celebrate? Ama yetu ni ya miaka 2. Because if for them they saw those many decades ahead. Sisi wenye tuko saa hii, how far ahead are we seeing?
Yeah.
And now with climate change, because I can tell you, hii mambo ya climate change, tumekuwa tukiongelea, but we had not seen it going to the kind of extremes that we are seeing today.
Yeah.
Sahi, the biggest challenge for any warden in a park is actually planning for wildlife under circumstances which you are not very sure of in the future, even in the next 1 year. Mbele ulikuwa na plan ukijua I'll do the silting in early January because the rains will be here in May. Then we could understand the cycle. Currently, with the weather patterns, very unpredictable. Sasa ukiambia warden akupangie mambo yake, it is very easy to plan on infrastructure and other things. But for wildlife, last year in this park, we were forced actually to supplement, for the first time in this park, supplement wildlife with water and hay.
Because of the drought.
Because of the drought.
Yeah.
We were even losing wildlife to drought. Something that had not been seen before. Sasa mvua imenyesha. All the dams are overflowing. But if you ask me today, what is my prediction for the weather in the next 6 months? Here, Brian, I can't be able to tell. So you are seated in the office, you are planning, but you're not very sure whether the planning you are doing for next year, December, is one to address drought or one to address flooding.
Yeah.
Initially it was easy. Saizi ukiuliza warden, ile plan uko nayo next year December, for the environment, what is it going to address? Is it flooding or drought? Hawezi kuambia.
Yeah.
Because last year tulikuwa tunaongea kuhusu drought kwa hii park.
And it was very serious.
It was severe.
Yeah.
I can tell you, I've been in this in and out of this park for a number of years. Since 2008. Sijawahi ona ile kitu niliona hiyo kwa hii park.
Yeah.
The land was bare. Dams that I have never seen drying up. Maji ilikuwa imeisha.
Yeah.
That we are actually tracking in hay. Tunakuja kuwekea wanyama hapa. You could see buffaloes staggering and falling. Now, right now, bwana vile kunakaa. It is all green.
So green. You can't even tell.
Green.
A few months ago, it was brown kabisa.
Sasa hii nikiunda plan yangu ya next year. Najiuliza now, what am I planning for next year?
Yeah.
Will this green continue? Will it increase? Ama ile kiangazi ya last year tena itakuwa imerudi.
Ama because the intensity of the rain right now doesn't mean then the drought will have ikikuja na itakuwa na intensity yake.
Exactly.
Yeah, and let's talk about hata vizuri umesema mambo ya climate change.
Yes.
So now, because it's very difficult, the challenges that come with it, what are some of the things that you think would help mitigate it? Is it, as you said, supplementary budget for it, or is it creating more boreholes just in case? Is it figuring out how to manage the vegetation during drought? What happens?
So ni ngumu. Because you are planning for something that is very unpredictable.
Yeah.
And its impact is also very unclear.
Yeah.
So currently now what we are doing, we are asking ourselves, with the two extremes, what do we need to have in place? If there is severe drought, what do we need to have in place? So that's why ukizunguka sahi kwa park, we have desilted nearly all the dams and even added their capacity, so that when we get good rains, at least we are sure there is enough water all year round. The biggest now challenge will remain pasture, because in as much as you can supplement animals with hay, there is a way that hay does not work out the way pasture does. One, it tends to congregate the animals. Secondly, they are not used to it. And you see, with congregation, we also realized all animals of prey, the lions, si wanajua hay imewekwa pale. They know that's where the herbivores will congregate. So they were just coming and laying ambush there. Ukiaddress hii challenge, inaleta ingine ambayo hata huko umeona. Then now we're also looking at what do we do in case there is now too much rainfall. Again, now we look at the kind of infrastructure we have. So we are redoing some of the bridges, clearing the waterways. We are even looking at now issues of when we are putting up staff houses, staff facilities. We need to have them on grounds where we are sure even with heavy rains, the staff will be safe. Sahi hatuwezi assume ati maji kwa sababu hujaifika hapa we are okay. We are realizing what was okay several decades ago might not be okay in the next few years.
Yeah.
Then the issue of boreholes, Brian, and it's good that you raised the issue of boreholes.
Yeah.
People have the assumption that ukiwa na shida ya maji, dig more boreholes. If it's not raining, dig more boreholes. But kwani borehole inatoa maji wapi, Brian? A borehole is not a processing plant. Brian, borehole haitengenezi maji. Borehole lazima ipate maji kutoka mahali. And they zitapata maji kukinyesha. But sisi tuna assume kama mvua hakuna, just add boreholes. Where are they going to get water?
Yeah.
We must conserve the forests. We must conserve our habitats, so that when we get that rain, it is that rain that will percolate and feed our boreholes.
Yeah.
So ukiangalia boreholes nowadays, people are going deeper and deeper.
Yeah.
But will you go down indefinitely? From a few hundred meters some years back. So ukiangalia, everybody is actually trying to outdo the other. So finally, you'll hit the bedrock. You will hit a place where sasa maji hakuna. So we cannot look at the issue of boreholes as the long-term solution to issues of water. It is up to us. It is up to us to ensure that our habitats are safeguarded. Miti yetu, like the president said, the target that we have.
Yeah.
Alisema miti ngapi? 15 billion.
15 billion trees. Yeah.
I can tell you that is what will change the Kenyan landscape.
Yeah.
See boreholes, because the president himself, si angesema tu acha nipeane budget ya boreholes. Because borehole ni one of. But at his level, he understands the solution is not doing the boreholes.
Yeah.
The solution is for us to improve our forest cover, so that now, you know, rain will tupate mvua. Then from there, if you do a borehole, you are at least assured itakuwa iko na maji.
That's true. And now with the 15 billion trees, during that time, the National Tree Planting Day, Nairobi Park planted quite a few. And you also offered space for visitors to come and plant.
Is
it something you encourage visitors? Wakikuja, they do some tree planting. And
we always, because of course it was part of the national exercise, so the park also participated. 5,000 trees planted. We're encouraging people to plant not only in the park, but even in their own areas, because for this park, we also don't want to over modify the habitat. We don't want to turn the open savanna into a forested area, because we need to maintain also the park itself as natural as it is. Isikuwe tena there are 117 square kilometers, we want to turn it into a forest, because that again will interfere, you know, with the natural balance of things here. So what we are telling Kenyans, ukikuja, because there are people who will say munasema hakuna mahali ya kupanda miti na park, kuna mahali nimeona haina miti. But we are telling them we don't want to modify the habitat so much. But it doesn't mean hakuna atiwezi pata mahali ya kupanda miti. Engage even KFS. They have mapped the whole country. They know areas where trees need to be planted. If you are near KWS station out there, just engage the warden. Na atakwambia, okay, within this area, the place that we have identified is this locality.
And you've said something about modifying the landscape.
Yes.
Nairobi Park, with its own uniqueness, it has different kinds of landscapes.
Yes.
We have the forest area, the grassland,
the
savanna,
wetlands. Yes.
Which is something that is very, and people don't think about it. It's very unique. Like you can get a foresty experience, natural trail kule juu, and then wetlands kule kwa hippos.
Yes.
And then you come savanna kule kwa lions. It's a very interesting park.
And Brian, we will say the beauty of it is that it's all natural. There is no modification that we have done, and we are not intending to do any modification in this park. So that even for us, the only time we will have interventions is when we feel that the situation actually requires human intervention. But for the other times, let nature take its course.
And back to climate change, do you think with all these two vans that the best solution would be having them electric? Do you think that's a good solution? That's a
Actually, eventually that's the way to go. We've done a few tests here. There was a company that piloted use of electric vans here. We were able to actually to see firsthand. One, the issue of pollution, noise pollution, because the vehicles are very silent, and that's what you require for a game drive, so that, you know, even the animals don't feel disturbed. Because you might be a very good driver, you might be observing the distance, lakini kama gari na guruma kama tractor, mnyama atasumbuka tu. But with electric cars, I mean, utaweza kuona mnyama hatasumbuka. So even when you're going past that animal, the animal will be very okay. Then there are guys who are taking videos. You need that silence. So even for, you know, wanaitwa ni filmographer, you'll be able to do it, you know, in a very quiet environment. Si ya kufika gari, ezima gari, fanya hivi. So that is the way, and it's not only, you know, for the two operators, even for the local mwananchi.
For the customer experience.
So that we also reduce our carbon footprint.
Because
you imagine currently the only place that is actually, you know, taking up this carbon is the park within Nairobi. We occupy a sixth of Nairobi. So hii moshi yote mnatoa huko nje, mimi ndio napambana nayo hapa. Actually I should build Nairobians. Piga picha.
Isn't it Impala? Do you have an interesting fact about these animals?
So what we are seeing here, Brian, this is a herd of male impala.
Oh, their own male,
we call them a bachelor herd. So among the impalas, the dominant male in a family will always kick out all the young males from that family, so that now he remains, like in charge of that family. So he'll not entertain other males within the family. So when you are kicked out, you come and join what you are seeing here, the bachelor herd. So hapa ni ujaribu patapate nguvu, then when you feel you are strong enough, you go and challenge the dominant male in the family. Now the challenge will come in the form of a fight.
Yeah.
So they usually have a very serious fight. They lock horns hapa kwa park. They can actually do it for a whole hour.
Just fighting. Now the winner takes over that family. Yeah.
The loser, so unakuja unajoin bachelor herd.
Unarudi
Unaendelea na maisha hapa. Urudishe nguvu kidogo.
Unakuja probation.
Hiyo unakuja unatulia. Mpaka ile wakati utasikia umepata nguvu.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So it's the way nature, operates.
Yeah.
All animal species, they have a way of maintaining their families.
Yeah.
For the impalas, they'll have a fight. For the ostriches, they do a dance.
Yeah.
Most birds just do a display.
Yeah.
For some, they build a nest. It now depends on the species. For other animals, you realize that they're able to, live as a family without a very big issue.
Yeah.
But there are those which are very particular.
Even humans have their own way of wooing.
Every species, it's natural selection. So every species, one way or another, will find a way of, getting a mate, both for the female and the male.
And for the male. That's very interesting. I didn't know that was a bachelor herd.
That's a bachelor herd.
Yeah, so we were talking about electric cars. There's this camp in Masai Mara, and I will never get tired of talking about it. And they have the electric tour vans.
Yes.
And something I realized, it might be expensive at first, the capital cost, but after you get it, that's it, because you're not paying for fuel. You're charging by solar.
Yes.
And even the guests who's using the car will have a much better experience. They will notice that hii gari imenyamaza
sana. Actually, that's the first thing you notice with an electric car. The silence. Of course, now, for it to be fully operational, that infrastructure needs to be in place. Because hii gari lazima ucharge. Whether ni by solar, whether ni by electricity. So with good infrastructure, then the vehicles can become a more commonplace. Then secondly, pia, you need to see a few people successfully using the vehicle, because unajua pia Mkenya ana take time kabla aanze kitu mpya. But once they see that kumbe inafanyika, it's possible. That's how they'll be able to shift. And of course the price is a bit steep.
Yeah.
The price is we were informed that the price, some people felt that it's like you're buying a new car, even to convert what you have, a diesel vehicle to electric.
Yeah.
But now I think once that one is addressed, so that you don't feel as if again you are spending
too much,
so much, because especially for the tour industry, it's an investment.
Yeah.
So you don't want to invest in one vehicle, probably money that you feel you could have bought two.
Yeah.
Unaangalia return on investment, the timings, unaona, I'd rather buy two vehicles that run on diesel than one vehicle.
Than one, yeah.
But if they can be able to manage the cost so that you also feel that, you're not losing out,
you'll be fine. I've seen, but they have a very big population of guinea fowls.
Wameongezeka sana.
Nimeona wengi sana.
The numbers are doing very well. One, because there is no illegal activities that happen in the park at mambo ya poaching na nini. Because out there, because the animal is not dangerous.
Yeah.
So out there the numbers have really shrunk. Because si watu wanaweka mitego kila mahali. But within the park, the population can do very well. Because the biggest threat will actually be man. Huko Nairobi imeguru. Years back when I was here, you could not see any buildings on that side. That's now across Magadi River.
Yeah.
You could only spot maybe one or two. So even when you're doing a game drive, you actually felt that it was a continuation of the park.
Yeah.
But nowadays, when you're doing a game drive here, the boundary is very clear when you're here. You can actually be able to tell, huko ni nje ya park. But you can imagine, and we're talking of about 1.5 decades ago.
Yeah.
there was nothing there. So when you were doing a game drive, you actually felt that that was an extension of the park. But now you can see the population is expanding rapidly. Housing units are coming up all over. So within a very short time, the park will have been fenced in.
Yeah, to avoid, because what is stopping a lion from going there? Nothing.
Hizi parks are urban parks.
Yeah.
Brand ziko na kazi.
I can imagine.
Try to look into the future. Ziko na kazi.
Unalala unasikia kuna simba Rongai.
Ziko na kazi. Because what do we do? What do we do? Out there, we have no control over what people are doing on their spaces.
Yeah.
Actually, it's only that now the government is actively trying to secure the wildlife corridor, ile tunaita Arthi Kapiti, so that we can connect the southern tip of the park to the Arthi Kapiti plains all the way to Machakos. And it is out of that we will secure this park.
Yeah.
Bila hiyo Brian, hii park itakuwa zoo. Itakuwa zoo. That's why currently the discussion now about this park is not even about inside the park. It's about opening up that connectivity.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately, it has been a discussion for many years, but nothing concrete has ever been done. But now, at least for the first time, we are now seeing it, taking a good direction. Now, with the guarantee from the head of state, map your corridor, you'll get my support. Once now we establish that connectivity, at least the kind of pressure that we are seeing on the park, probably 50% of it will have gone, because now the animals will be able to move freely in and out of the park without a lot of interruptions.
Yeah. And Arthi Kapiti Plains is it's a big piece of land that connects to Nairobi National Park, the western side and the southern side.
The southern side. Actually, that area is even bigger than Nairobi Park. Because we are talking of, when you talk of Arthi Kapiti, we are talking even of the group ranches. There are people who own huge parcels of land that are already committed to the conservation agenda.
Okay.
So see ati ni watu tunaenda ati kuanza renegotiation. These are people who have already committed themselves that actually our land is available for wildlife. But how do we connect it to Nairobi National Park?
Yeah. Yeah. Ile ni black. But it's a bit far. The Nairobi National Park Management Plan. That's one of the big things, and this is also the reason why, because I saw the new rate card.
Yes.
And it has been a very big talk.
Yes.
By stakeholders and Kenyans about the increase in fee.
Yes.
And this is some of the things that are in place to ensure maximum experience.
Yes.
So now if you're extending the land, that means the population will grow, because animals will move and they'll be able to breed.
Yes.
And you can have a much better experience. You don't have to enter through Nairobi. You can enter through the river.
Actually, unaongea ni kama umekuwa kwa hizi mikutano.
Obviously there are challenges here and there.
Yes.
However, for all these challenges to be mitigated, we have to accept that we need to kind of make sure that the premium-ness of the park also translates with conservation fees. And
unaona park fees currently Kenyans are paying how much? 430 shillings.
Yeah.
Hata ukiuliza Mkenya, and when you pay that 430 and you've come in at 6 in the morning, inakuruhusu ukae hapa mpaka jioni at 430 shillings.
Yeah.
Hakuna mtu anakuja kuambie masaa imeisha. Bana nasema hata ukienda kwa hoteli uitishe meal ya 3000 shillings. Ukimaliza wameshatoa sahani. Unaanza kuambiwa no idling, no idle sitting. Paka ina idle sitting. Umeingia na hiyo 430 utakaa nayo mpaka jioni. And before we proposed these new rates, pia tunaangalia so that we don't make the park inaccessible to Kenyans.
Yeah.
Tunaangalia price ambayo Mkenya akilipa ata feel value for money. Hata sikia tena ni kama anazuiwa kutembea kwa park. It is a rate that we feel is fair both to government, because operations must also continue. for you to be able to enjoy the kind of roads we have in the park, for you to be able to enjoy the kind of security that we have in the park, to enjoy a healthy wildlife population, there is a cost to it. There is a cost to it. So tunaangalia, tuna strike balance, tunaona okay, hii haitakuwa imefinya mwananchi na pia serikali pande yake itakuwa imepata revenue.
Yeah, so and these are some of the things that people don't see. But unajua, at the end of the day, as you said, this operation costs the park, they are not cheap.
They are not.
They are not cheap at all. I have witnessed it.
This is how Brian, out of the about 28 national parks in the country, there are those ones that don't earn enough revenue to sustain their own operations.
That's true.
But we're not closing business. Ujue, a national park is not run like an enterprise. Wakati ya COVID, mtu mwenye alikuwa na hoteli si alifunga. But we did not close our parks because we know that our mandate is about the welfare of that wildlife. So whether there is COVID, whether there is what, parks remain operational. Mwenyama hata elewa there was COVID, so the finances were low. Security operations continue irrespective of the environment out there. The social, the economic, the political environment. That one will not disrupt our operations. So tuwa tunasema usione tu Nairobi and Amboseli and Nakuru revenue wise, unasema KWS is collecting so much money. What about the parks that people rarely visit? And we also sustaining the operations. Apart from that, we have the field stations, the ones that don't collect any revenue at all. Within our conservation area, that is southern, the only place we are talking of good revenue is Nairobi and Amboseli.
Amboseli, yeah.
Although it is a park, but revenue is not that high. But within the same conservation area, how many stations do we have? We have Kajiado, we have Machakos, we have Nguruman, we have Ngong. These are not revenue centers. These are actually cost centers. And without them, mwananchi huko nje atapiga kelele, human wildlife conflict. So it's good also people to understand that the parks, the way they are modeled, they are not there for revenue collection only. Hata wakati mgeni atembei, we don't stop our operations.
Yeah, every single day. And then also now, security-wise, poaching. You have to constantly have people on the ground, making sure that everything is where it should be and no one is intruding in the park. So that is also a cost, for ranger patrol, for the vehicles that, for operational cars.
So, Brian,
intelligence.
I'm going to say, mtu akikuja, then you are taken through Kenya Wildlife Service operations. Hata utashangaa. The input that is required. Aircraft, heavy equipment that is graders. Kama sahii wageni wanakwama kwa park. Tunawakwamua. We use our land cruisers, we use our tractors, because hatutaacha mgeni alale kwa park. And you see, part of our customer service is that mgeni akikwama ndani ya park, kumenyesha amekwama ama hata amepata breakdown, we tow them out. It's part of our customer service. Hatutamwambia tafuta breakdown, achajiwe probably 10,000 kwa sababu amekwama ndani ya park. We told them out, umepata breakdown. Yes, hata tunaangalia tunaona it has nothing to do with the park. It's a normal mechanical breakdown. But as part of customer service, we told you. Those are some of the hidden costs that people rarely realize. Again, security operations, they are being done 24 hours a day. 24 hours a day. Whether or not we are in high season, we are in low season, there is COVID, security operations don't stop. That's another hidden cost, because we are not going now to publish that we have this number of rangers, consuming this amount of resources, but those operations are continuous.
Yes, and not just in here, outside there, gathering intelligence in case of wildlife trafficking and illegal wildlife trade and all the vices that happen. So that's also a very big cost in itself.
Imagine stations out there dealing with issues of human wildlife conflict. They are not revenue centers at all. At all. hakuna revenue hata kidogo wanachukua. So this is a Kingfisher picnic site. We are currently doing an ablution facility for persons living with disability. Because again, it has been a concern. How do we address, visitors living with a disability? So we are going to have the first two. They are actually under construction, really unaona. So one is here at Kingfisher. The other will be at a place we call Mokoyet. So that even for them, when they are doing a game drive and they need to use the washrooms, wasikue wanahangaika sana.
They can just come here.
They can just come here.
So this is also another hidden cost, eh?
But at least the outcome is visible. Because we also want to ensure that everybody enjoys these parks. When we forget persons living with disability, when we forget the senior citizens, when you forget the less privileged in society, then we have forgotten ourselves as a society. So even for us as Kenya Wildlife Service, we try to do what we can internally to ensure that we are able to address some of the concerns that these people have. Like for example, for the schools neighboring the park, those ones that we feel are underprivileged, they might not be able to pay the park fees. They do a letter, they request a waiver, it goes to the DG's office so that they get the approval. Then we also provide buses for them. Na unakuta kwa hawa watoto, they neighbor the park, but that kid has never been to the park. Wale wanyama amekuwa kiona ni wakati wametoka huko nje, wakati ya conflict. So even that kid's interaction with wildlife has never been positive. Yeye anajua tukiona simba kwa Manyata imekuja kuhangaisha mbuzi. But when they come to the park, and more often than not, because it's the first time, you realize that for that kid, the perception about wildlife changes completely. You realize that within that 2-hour game drive, mtoto amechange, hata roho imebadilika from that new of wildlife is a no to actually being an ambassador for wildlife.
And speaking of kids, there's a time I saw Orphanage. They were hosting kids with blind kids with the blind
visual impairment,
disability. And it was interesting because wildlife, in my head, is a visual experience. But then you could tell mtoto anashika cage, anaweka tu mikono hivi ama anasikia sauti ya mnyama, and they get very excited. So it not only is a visual, it's only visual because we think it's visual.
Exactly, because we get a lot of people who are visually impaired coming to the park. One, family wezi kuje muache nyumbani. How? Because you'll not be able to see what we are going to see, we are going to leave you at home. They are part of family, they are part of society. Then you realize they really also enjoy when the people in that vehicle are describing what they are seeing. Unajua hata anapiki your excitement, anasikia hata hawa wamefurahi because they've seen a giraffe, so he senses the excitement, so the excitement rubs onto him, so that even if visually he's not seeing the animal, the description that he's getting, the joy that is coming from the other family members also rubs onto him. Because hatufai sasa tile sisi unajua nile mnyama ni wa kuona. Then you always realize if somebody is visually impaired, more often than not, the other senses are usually very sharp. So his sense of hearing is very good, his sense of smell is very good, his sense of touch is very good. So when he's in the park, he's actually able to enjoy the music of the birds. Wewe ukizunguka kwa park, macho yanatafuta tu simba. Hata ndege zikiimba hakuna kitu unasikia, but for him gari ikiwa imesimama, that music from the birds, he's able to enjoy it more than the other guys in that car.
That's true. And then the smell of nature.
Exactly.
Fresh air and you can absorb better than. So now this is now the forest area.
So this is the forested section, covering probably just about 10% of the park. Extends from just right behind the barracks all the way to multimedia. Around the the Galleria point. So that is the forested area. Then we have wildlife that prefer the forested area, like the black rhino. Most of them, will find them in the forested area. There are certain, animals also that we find in the forested area. That is what makes the parks beautiful. Leopards, often than not, in the forested area. So for somebody who is into certain birds, certain animals, he'll just tend to do a drive within the forested area. Then once you come into the savannah area, everything changes. Now you are meeting the plain game, zebra, wild beasts,
lions.
So it's always magical when you're doing a game drive. That change, seeing animals in different habitats.
Yeah. Yeah, and by the way, I haven't seen a leopard in Nairobi National Park. I know they are there, and I'll definitely get to see one. But yeah, you're right.
Leopards, because of their behavior, their nature, one, they are nocturnal. So normally operating at night, they are solitary. Hakuna siku utakuta msafara ya leopard. Then they are always, they are arboreal. Mara mingi yako juu ya miti. So that combination makes it very difficult to spot. Leopards require patience. If you are not a patient guy, hakuna siku utaona leopard kwa park. They require patience. You go into that forest today, zero. Not even a sign. You might do about 2 or 3 trips before now you get lucky.
Yeah.
Of course, kuna wale wanaingia and their first day
anapata kibahati
nayo kwa barabara.
Yeah, and what's your favorite animal?
Incidentally, it's the same leopard I'm describing.
Yeah. You like the leopard?
This is one of the busiest intersections. Because this is like the main circuit.
Okay.
So most visitors, when they come into the park, especially wale wajazoea, the first circuit they'll always do is what we call the hyena dam, ivory burning, kingfisher circuit.
Yeah.
Most guys, normally if you're a first timer, that is usually where they feel most comfortable, doing the game drive.
Yeah. Why is it? Is it because the road, or it's because of wildlife?
It's closer to the main gate. It's closer to Mbagathi gate.
Okay. Yeah.
So most guys feel, unajua ukiingia tu hivi, you first want to do a loop that you feel gate haiko mbali. Because now they explore the Arthi basin area, guys tend just now to first do this loop.
Okay, well, that's very interesting. Apart from Nairobi National Park, where have you been before?
So I have worked in Savo West.
Yeah.
I have worked at the Nairobi Animal Orphanage, and I worked in Meru, Meru National Park.
Yeah.
And all those parks are unique.
Yeah.
Very different, very unique. Their own unique challenges, their own unique, attractions, experiences.
Yeah.
Because like Nairobi is relatively small, 117 square kilometers. Savo West is around 7,000. So you can imagine you move from here to Savo West. The first thing you notice is the expansiveness of that park.
Yeah.
Because that time I came from Nairobi to Savo West. So the farthest distance I used to drive one way within the park is probably just about 30 kilometers. You are at the tip of the park.
Yeah.
Then you're in Savo, whereby from one tip of the park to the other, you are talking of about 120 kilometers. So unaanza safari bako unajiuliza, am I still within the park?
Yeah, Savos
are something else. Am I still within the park?
Yeah.
You are going all the way to the border between Kenya and Tanzania at Lake Jipe. Unajiuliza bado niko Kenya kweli ama Tanzania? I'm now outside the park and out of the country. So it gives its own unique challenges, because like now for Savos, those are wilderness areas. So it's a park that when you go there, you need time. Ukume relax, you know that for the next 8 hours, the next 6 hours, I'm actually doing a game drive. Then Meru, of course, unique in that one, people assume that Meru Park is around the Mount Kenya area. Unajua wakisikia tu Meru, they assume that iko tu pale kwa mlima. Meru Park is about 80 kilometers from Meru town.
Yeah.
And even the climate there,
very hot.
Ni a semi-arid area. So watu the first thing wanafikanga Meru Park ni kuuliza hii mahali iko Meru. You see it's right at the tip of Meru. Touches Tharaka Nithi. Isiolo County.
And so a bit of, is it Kitui?
No, now from Eastern. Meru you move to Kora, which connects Meru Park. Now you are in Kitui.
In Kitui, yes.
So you can even see then Garissa. To the left. So even the climate there, si ile huko juu kwa mlima, ni ile ya semi-arid areas. So even for me when I landed there, the first thing nilishindwa kwani nimerudishwa some west. Weather ya pale na ya Savo is more or less the same thing.
And then Meru, one thing, it's a very underrated park. That park it's rich. Actually, it's one of the few parks that I have spotted a leopard, Namacho. They have is it the Rothschild giraffe? No, the reticulated giraffe.
They have the zebra.
A gravy zebra.
The gravy zebra, yes.
They also have they have the big five.
They have the big five.
All of them.
Abundance of rhinos, abundance of elephants, lions.
It is one of the most underrated parks. Every time someone asks me for the park that they should visit, Meru is that park. Then a family of ostriches.
We have a good population of ostrich. They've been doing quite well of late. They also survived the drought very well. Hatukuwa na mortalities za ostriches.
And is it because they adapt very well in hot weather, ama their food is available regardless of whether there's no rain?
I think one is that they're able to forage they were able to forage on the little that was there. Though they are not as heavy eaters like buffaloes. So zikiingia hapa kwa forest, they were able, the seeds that were drying and falling off, insects, what not have you. So they were able actually to feed on that. Of course, you could see that their health was not that good, but we did not get mortalities.
So the most affected animal during the drought was buffalo.
Was the buffalo.
And it's because it's a heavy feeder. And
incidentally, we had expected the rhinos, being also heavy feeders, to be more affected than the buffalo. But it turned out the other way around. Buffaloes were more affected for reasons probably I don't know myself, but they lost weight very fast. Their deaths became more frequent. Even after we began feeding them on hay, we were still seeing mortalities. But for rhinos, somehow they were able to maintain their body conditions even during that drought period. Nyati sasa mvua imenyesha, maji ni mingi.
No, speaking of buffaloes, ndio wale. So this is the wetland area.
These are kind of a wetland area. Kukiwa kumenyesha, this area becomes a very good nini for buffalo. Na pia pale kuna crested crane.
Hao wanafuatanga buffaloes, ama it's the kawaii bird that
egrets ndio utakuta wakifuata buffalo because of the ticks.
It's called a what?
The egrets.
The white.
Kale kawaii.
Okay, interesting. So now, at least now buffaloes are the ones that will likely get affected more.
Exactly, But now from the drought that we had, it was a learning experience for us also. That the animals we need to watch out for are the buffaloes. Unlike what we had assumed in the past, that rhinos will be heavily affected, but we realized buffaloes, they don't do so well under that kind of extreme drought.
So now the solution is planting as many trees as possible, because now the way things are going, with the unpredictability of climate change, and heavy, when it's rainy, it's heavy, or when it's sunny, it's very dry.
Now we are now seeing extremes of both. Extremes of both.
Okay.
Kazi ni kuzoea tu Brian. Hii job ni kuzoea. Na uikubali na uipende. Hata haikupei choice. Uikubali na uipende. Then you realize you took over from people who had done even more. because we must appreciate the generations who took care of this before we came in.
Yeah.
You can imagine Warden wa 1946. Vehicles were few, roads, telecommunication was a challenge because sasa hiyo wakati simu labda ni moja tu ile iko kwa ofisi. So even getting some of these reports, you actually had to move physically. Uende ulize watu mko namna gani. But at least for us now with the technology, there are, you know, issues that I'm able to receive on phone and act on them without physically being on the ground. So we also appreciate the people who've been there before us, and we also appreciate that once we are gone, there are people who are coming, and we're hoping that, you know, we'll be handing over something that is, you know, very solid, very sustainable to them.
Yeah.
Lakini kazi brand hii lazima mtu ajitume. Lazima ujitume.
I have seen it. And then, you know, mnyama hajui ni weekend. Hajui ati
ni holiday.
Ati Muraya ako off.
Hajui hiyo, hataki kujua kama ni holiday.
Yeah.
On Christmas Day unaamuka na unamkia na human wildlife conflict. Unaambiwa nyati zinakula mahindi ya watu huko nje. So it's not an issue that you can say that one now will address in early January. Hakuna.
Yeah. And how's the relationship between your people and the community?
I must say the community here is what can I say? Ni watu tumeingiana nao. They have been with this wildlife longer than any of us.
Yeah.
Because for them it has been generation after generation. And even some of the actions that we take when it comes to human wildlife conflict, actually the solutions come from them. I can tell you, kama saa hii wakikwambia hii simba haitawacha kukula mbuzi, they know what they are saying. Even when it comes to translocation, we might have the technical expertise, but it is them who will always advise. Wakwambie hii simba msitoe. Hii tunaijua. Huwa si mnyama ambaye anasumbua sana. So the relation between the park and the community is quite good. They have actually been very supportive of our conservation efforts.
Yeah.
They've also been at the forefront when we are addressing issues of human wildlife conflict. Because we came to realize, Brian, they have more knowledge on human wildlife conflict than we have. Hawa ni watu wameishi na hawa wanyama for years and years, generation after generation. So we might have the technical expertise on translocation and so on, but they know animal behavior better than us. So hata wakati kuna simba huko nje anasumbua, I can tell you there is a time that we might feel we need to trap this lion. Watakwambia hapana. Hii simba hata mkiona huku nje, hii hainanga mambo mingi. But there is an individual that will tell you, huyu msipotoa, one of these days, it will cause a human fatality. So we actually listen to them because they are like our rangers out there. He's bearing the brunt of conflict, and at the same time, he's giving you a solution. So we always listen to them, and with that, unakuta now there is no much conflict between them and the park.
So this is now a family now of females. Yes, this is the winner now.
So tunaona, ukiangalia utaona, no, that's a herd of, that's a bachelor herd. These are males with just how many? 2 females here. So no, that's a bachelor herd. So you find that these ones, there is a dominant male, a dominant male with the herd here, but there is a bachelor herd that is very close.
And the difference is males have horns.
The males have horns, yes,
and females don't. Interesting. Yeah. So yeah, then it's very important to
you can't work without the community.
The community, yeah.
You might not always be in agreement, but you can't work without a community. Hakuna siku.
Yeah. For both of you.
Hakuna. Mambo umeshatokezea.
Crocodiles, eh? Unamwona?
Si ndio wale pale. How many? 1, 2, 3.
And the hippos are in water, obviously.
We have a very huge, big family of hippos here. Ndio wale unaona kaina kama island.
Yeah.
In the middle. There's a hippo actually moving towards it. Then you can see about 2 hippos on this side.
Pale kwa zile miti?
Unaona hiyo kabushi iko katikati ya maji.
Oh, I can see it. I have seen it.
Kuna masikio hapo.
I've seen it.
They are really enjoying the weather because the rains have been good. So there is water everywhere, grass everywhere.
Yeah.
During the drought, the hippos really suffered because now, apart from the drying up of the dams, grass around the Nini had become totally depleted around the dams. Yeah. So you can imagine, even for them, they were moving very long distances to forage for grass.
Yeah. And hippos require water.
Yes. Hawezi ishi bila maji. Their nature is that they don't have the
fur or thick skin.
Pores,
the pores.
Okay. To regulate temperature. So they're not able to regulate their own temperatures. So that's why they have to stay submerged in water to cool them off.
Yeah. Okay. So and that's why
the sweating glands easy hawana. So you expose it to too much sunlight, hata unakuta imepata hizo skin burn. Very bad sunburn.
Okay.
Mtu ametulia kwa maji.
Yeah.
Hii kazi ni masomo continuous, Brian. Ni continuous.
Kuna mnyama anafurahia,
unasoma, then you realize bado.
Kuna mnyama ana thrive in dry areas, kuna mwingine haiwezi.
The beauty, one good thing about this job is that when you feel you want to unwind as a warden, you just go into the park. So you are killing two birds with one stone.
Yeah.
You are working and you also unwinding. So unatulia tu hapa mbele na driver, unapiga story, lakini wewe mwenyewe una ease off kidogo. So at least it also provides an opportunity for you as the warden to also unwind.
Yeah, that's true. Because you're working, but you won't be working.
Exactly.
Yeah. You come, at least blow off some steam and then go back.
Mimi sasa zile nimechoka na ofisi. Sema tu acha niingie ndani. I do a drive of about 2 hours. By the time you're coming back to the office, you are very refreshed.
You're very refreshed. Yeah, it is also something that I do as well. I just fuel the car. Nakuja tu nafanya my own game drive,
bus.
And then go back now to Nairobi. So you did Savo West, Meru, and Orphanage.
Orphanage, yes.
Orphanage. First of all, I really like Orphanage because the behind the scenes of Orphanage is way more. You remember the video I did of the caretaker? And I spent a few hours with the caretaker, and his schedule of feeding animals from every day, knowing which animal should eat at what time. He has a checklist and all these things. Is there something nice that you can tell me about Orphanage?
The Orphanage for me, because it was the first time I was actually working there. Yeah. So you can imagine now the transition from Meru. The larger Meru ecosystem is 4,000 square kilometers. You're talking of Meru Park, Kora, Mwingi, Bisanadi reserves.
Yeah.
So you're coming from an area that is so expansive, about 4,000 square kilometers, to an area that barely measures 1 square kilometer. So the first thing actually, ukifika pale unajiuliza, kazi yangu ni gani hapa? Because the area looks so small. The animals are in cages. But I can tell you, within a short time, I came to appreciate what our team does there. Unakuta, it's a very delicate place to manage. Apart from the animals that you see regularly, there are the animals that are brought in from the field with various issues. Kama nikiwa hapo, there were cheetahs from Wajir, very young cubs, a few days old. Watu wamepata huko, community zimewekwa kwa ndege, zimeletwa. And I could see the amount of care and attention that was going to those animals. So our staff actually every day had to sleep within that facility. Every day. Unaamka every 2 hours, unafeed huyu mnyama na maziwa. And you're trying to get everything right, because you are trying to, mimic the mother. So wamefunikwa na blanketi, warm water bottles. Then you see the amount of passion and compassion that employee has.
Yeah.
That one goes beyond the call of duty. Hata vile anambembeleza, anampatia maziwa, you know, they were giving me regular updates. Actually, it is the orphanage that, you know, brought me very close to these animals. Because in the park, you're observing them from far.
From a distance, yeah.
But here, umeletewa mnyama, this animal is orphaned. A very young cheetah cub, very young lion cub, a very young giraffe. So amefika, they are on milk bottles, probably for the next few months.
Yeah.
And you can see the amount of attention, the amount of care that is required. So even for me, in as much as I'm a KWS employee, the orphanage changed my perceptions about that facility. Mimi nilikuwa naiona tu nasema orphanage wanyama si wako pale, but you realize the amount of work that actually goes on for that animal to be able, you know, to recover, ameletwa wakiwa mgonjwa, to get to the point where now they can be on public exhibition. And you know, people always ask, kwa nini mhamuachili hawa wanyama? But after staying there for a while, you actually come to appreciate why some of them cannot be released back into the wild. Ameletwa hapa, amekuwa handreared, amebebwa hivi na mkono, amepewa maziwa. So by the time they are getting to a certain age, they are already human dependent. So in as much as we try to reduce that dependency, so that once they are put in the cages, we don't allow any interactions, that close interaction. But you see, kwa akili ya huyo mnyama, kuna vile amezoeana na binadamu tayari. So you take it back to the wild, it will tend to gravitate towards, you know, human settlements. You will end up having issues of conflict.
Yeah.
Unajua mnyama hasahau haraka. So hata tukimweka kwa cage tuseme sasa tumewacha interaction, kuna kitu bado amebeba yenye najua at one point in time they interacted with man. So akitoka hapa nimweke kwa park, they'll just gravitate towards human settlements. Yeah. Now you'll get issues of conflict.
Yeah.
Alafu pia hajajifundisha ku hunt. Because, you know, hunting is something that the animal is taught.
Yeah.
By the parent.
By the parent, yes.
So pale there is no hunting that the animal is being taught. So ukimwachilia kwa kichaka, you know, that
hajui
is it.
Yeah. So it's a very delicate job, but it has to be done.
It has to be done.
Because it's always yacha cubs or kufe.
Yeah. Because ukisema utaki wazoee binadamu, are we going to leave them out there? Kiangazi ndio hii, the mother is dead, you have the cubs, are you going to allow them to suffer?
No, you can't.
No, utasema hapana. Let me bring them to the orphanage, let me see what I can do. Because it's also our duty to ensure that that animal does not continue suffering.
Yeah.
So one way or another, you know, we have to strike a balance. We try as much as possible not to have any animal every animal that has an issue brought to the orphanage. If the animal can be treated on site, that's much better.
Yeah.
But there are those situations that demand that the animal is actually brought to the orphanage. And don't forget, there are those ones which are brought to the veterinary center, treated and released back to the wild immediately.
Yeah.
It's not all animals that are brought to Nairobi that end up in the orphanage.
Yeah.
Every year our veterinary team treats dozens of animals. Some of them, they'll be brought all the way to the veterinary facility, but they'll not be put on public display. If you feel that this animal can recover quick enough so that by the time it gets habituated to man, it has already recovered. Huyo mnyama tunamrudisha kwa kichaka.
And you namtreat, tunamrudisha, that way they can go back to what they were doing.
Exactly.
And how they were living.
Brian, karibu. We've come to the end of our very short tour.
Yes, thank you so much for the tour.
This is part of our job and tales.
Yeah, we've gone through.
Hii kazi ukiipenda na uizoee, si ngumu.
Yeah.
Na ukubali iko na challenges zake. Na ukubali you are not perfect. It has its ups and downs.
Yeah.
There are times you get things right. There are times that things might not really work out. But huwa nasema isikuvunje moyo. You will see a lot in this job, because I can tell you, sometimes you expect that the challenge will be, you know, mambo ya kazi. Because for me, my lowest point was actually in Meru when we lost 2 officers to a plane accident. I think for me that's about 2 years back. That was the lowest point for me since I joined KWS, because these are people that I had spoken to in the morning na tumepanga kazi, only for me to receive a phone call in the evening.
That is it Kiplimo and
the late Plimo and Captain Lemaya.
Captain Lemaya.
Hakuna news mbaya. You know, you can have shock absorbers for work. Hizi challenges zingine za kazi, you can have shock absorbers to deal with them.
Yeah.
But kifo Brian haina shock absorber. You get that report, you sit down and realize we are human beings.
Yeah.
Because unajiuliza, all of them, they left their families. And I knew their families. Huyu ameacha family pande hii, huyu ameacha family pande hii. You are sure by that time they don't have that report. So hata unajiuliza now, how are they going to get the report? And how are they going to receive that report? How are they going to react? Hapo ni unagundua, hii job Brian, naambia watu, hii ni job ni Mungu mbele. Because you leave your place in the morning, you don't know. And like any other job in the country, whether you are in this industry or any other industry, put God first.
Yeah.
Because umepanga job, like for me that time I was proceeding for leave. So hata tumepangana nao na hata I had even done my handing over.
Yeah.
Only to be told, ndege imeanguka, and unfortunately, you know, both of your officers have lost their lives. So unarudi hata kwa ofisi unaketi chini na realize, hii maisha ni fupi. That's why I always say, just do your best. Wherever you are, Brian, just do your best, because you can never know about tomorrow.
Yeah.
And keep your family close. Especially for us, because we are forced to work very far from our families. Usikate ile communication. Don't wait ati kuna vitu utapanga ukifika nyumbani. Empower the people that you have at home. Ukisema ati kila kitu utafanya ile siku utaenda leave, there is nothing you'll ever be able to do at home.
Yeah.
Empower hata kama ni mama. Hauwezi sema Brian ati ng'ombe nitanunua nikienda leave. Kwani utarudi nayo job? Brian, ati hiyo ng'ombe mimi ndio naenda kununua. Kwani utakinunua utarudi nayo kazini? Empower wale watu umeacha nyumbani. If it is your spouse, if it is your parents, if it is your kids, so that hata wewe ukiwa job, things are not at a standstill. Because when you look at death, kifo haitataka kujua kama ulikuwa umeempower watu nyumbani. You are gone. Sasa if you had not taught them how to survive in this world,
yeah,
ndio unakuta sasa within a very short time hata hao wenyewe nyumbani things are not working out.
Yeah.
So it was a low moment for me, but it also reshaped a lot of my thinking.
Yeah.
I realized hii maisha ni fupi, and you just do your best, then from there sio ingine unaachia
tu Mungu.
So ni sawa Brian, thanks so much. Nimeshukuru.
Yeah.
Wacha niingie sasa kwa ofisi ni sign ile vitu iko pending.
So thank you so much for doing this.